And then the judges are going to go ahead and introduce themselves, and then we'll hear from the students introducing themselves, and we'll get started. So judges, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. I'm Jack Barlow. I'm a professor of politics at Juniata College, and my colleagues are Rita.
I'm Rita McCannon. I'm an attorney in Huntsville, Alabama. Glad to see you guys today.
I'm Tim Moore from the University of Wisconsin.
And I am seeing you again, and so I should know who you are, but I don't. So I'm going to ask you to do the introductions, and if you would introduce your teacher as well, please.
Good afternoon, judges. We are Unit 2, and our unit focuses on how the framers created our Constitution. My name is Taylor DeAndrea, and I will be studying political science at the University of Wisconsin at Madison.
Hello, my name is Curtis Blakely, and I will be studying literature at St. John's College.
Hi, my name is Emily Keegan, and I will be studying nursing at the University of South Carolina.
Good afternoon, judges. My name is Savik Bhagwati-Ulur, and I will be studying biology at the University of Texas at Austin. For now, we're all seniors at Trumbull High School, and this is our coach, Ms. Bowen. We thank you for being here today.
Thank you. I've been watching your photos on Twitter and Instagram, so I know what you've been up to. Hope you're having a good time in DC, and good luck to you next year. So we'll get the question read, and we'll get started with our discussion this afternoon. We chose question 2 for the question. So that's what I'll read here. When explaining why the proposed Constitution lacked a Bill of Rights, one Federalist claimed that, quote, in a government possessed of enumerated powers, such a measure would be not only unnecessary, but preposterous and dangerous, end quote. Do you agree or disagree with this statement? Why or why not? In your opinion, did the first 10 amendments to the Constitution sufficiently address the concerns of the Anti-Federalists? To what extent, if any, should we consider adding additional amendments to our Constitution? You may begin.
In 1787, then Ambassador to France, Thomas Jefferson wrote, "A Bill of Rights is what the people are entitled to against every government on earth, general or particular, and what no just government should refuse or rest on inference."
The genius of the Bill of Rights is that it checks majoritarian principles in favor of collectively acknowledged fundamental principles. It is a constitutional exercise of self-restraint, akin to a compact by which the people recognize that although majority rule is the bedrock of our democracy, the democracy envisioned in the Constitution is far from a pure majoritarian ideal.
James Wilson, speaking at the Pennsylvania Ratifying Convention, thought that the addition of a listing of rights to the original would be unnecessary. We disagree with Wilson in that, in a government possessed of enumerated powers, such a measure would not only be unnecessary, but preposterous and dangerous. Publius, or in this case, Alexander Hamilton, echoed those same feelings in Federalist 84, saying that bills of rights are unnecessary and dangerous.
The fundamental values of constitutional democracy reflect a paramount concern with human dignity and the worth and value of each individual. At its core, the rights in the first 10 amendments exist to protect and defend the liberty of all Americans, particularly from the tyranny of the majority, by removing those rights from the whims of the political majority.
Although the Bill of Rights calmed the arguments of the Anti-Federalists and brought us to ratification in 1791, some Anti-Federalists still objected to Madison's amendments, for he had admitted free and frequent elections, civilian control of the military, and freedom from suspension of laws. Some Anti-Federalists in Congress believed the amendments Madison had written were a weak concession to a lack of defined rights and didn't truly protect the people's interests.
We believe that the mixture of positive and negative rights within our first 10 amendments adequately address the concerns of the Anti-Federalists, without the ability to call up the government when it fails to provide the positive rights that are critical to a free society, such as a right to a speedy trial by a jury of our peers. There would be no guarantee of those rights, and the government would be less accountable to the people and could more readily violate the due process and liberty interests guaranteed in the Constitution.
The Bill of Rights is a mosaic of American ideals. It is not perfect and it's not absolute. It would have been impossible for the founders to think of everything, and truth be told, it is a good thing they didn't. Codifying what rights citizens had in that day and age would have assuredly have meant that many Americans today would lack the rights that Hamilton and others feared. This is where the amendment process becomes especially important. allowing us to expand our rights further as issues and interests change.
We live in a digital age full of social reform, economic distraught, and environmental concern, all issues and circumstances our founders had no capability to predict. As in a letter to Madison in 1789, Thomas Jefferson wrote, "The earth belongs always to the living generation and not to the dead."
We therefore propose the following amendments to our Constitution.
First, we need an amendment similar to some of the proposals of the Green New Deal that would finally address climate change.
Second, we need an amendment as proposed by Tom Udall, a senator from New Mexico, that would deal with campaign finance reform.
Third, we need a positive right to vote amendment. While the United States Constitution bans the restriction of voting based on race, sex, and age, it does not explicitly and affirmatively state that all U.S. citizens have the right to vote.
There is no Constitution and no Bill of Rights that alone can guarantee human freedom. Only we the people can do that. As Justice Lernham said, liberty lies in the hearts of men and women. When it dies there, no Constitution, no law, no court can even do much to help it.
Thank you. We're now ready for your questions.
Okay, thank you very much. So let me ask you this. You say that the Bill of Rights sort of stands against majoritarianism. But would you say that in the course of American history, when a majority has been determined to carry on a particular action or a particular line of policy, has the Bill of Rights really been a protection to help restrain that?
I think if we look at cases like Engel versus Vitale, even if like the majority of a country at that time was by and large of like a stronger religious faith than it is today, the right to not have prayer in a school was protected, indicating that the views of a minority are considered and respected, even if the majority stands against that.
I'm thinking about something like the communist cases in the 1950s, right? We had a majority that was interested in throwing the book at communists, and the Supreme Court didn't seem to do a very good job of standing in their way. So talk to me about that.
I think, unfortunately, with regards to that case, popular passions overrode any sort of positive sentiment we had towards respecting civil liberties. And we can only look like in hindsight and see that we committed like a wrong in discrediting and like discrediting and blacklisting many of these people who like worked in Hollywood and who were alleged or suspected or even real communists. For example, like Dalton Trumbull. And I consider it unfortunate that the court did not intervene in this matter.
And the other thing about the Supreme Court is the Supreme Court does not hold its responsibility to the will of the people, and the Supreme Court holds its responsibility to the words of the Constitution, as can be seen with the overturning of the Dred Scott case, and then later with Brown versus Board of Education being passed by the Supreme Court. Even though there was a majority of Americans in the country who had racist ideals, there was also the Supreme Court holding to the fact that the people in the United States deserve freedom. And the way that the Supreme Court was able to overturn legislation and allow students to attend schools that they weren't previously allowed to, obviously with Little Rock 9, allow for these opportunities that Americans didn't have because the Supreme Court was able to uphold the values of the Constitution.
Returning to your original question about tyranny of the majority at a federal level and wondering whether that would sway our decision, we can look back to Madison's opinions in Federalist 10, in which he said that tyranny of the majority is not as great of a fear on the federal level because we will take in a greater amount of parties and interests and extend the sphere. So therefore, a worry that a tyranny of the majority would overrule such amendments like this would in court hearings, then it wouldn't be as something to worry about.
Do you have any concerns about certain rights you may not feel like are protected now that should be? Or in the alternative, are you afraid of losing rights now that we have that may be threatened by society?
I think one of the main rights today that is prevalent and was not prevalent back then was the right to the internet. I believe that we should, or the UN actually said that the right to internet is a natural, a fundamental human right. And I believe that in order for us to properly gain our freedom of speech, communication with the people across the globe and within our country, we need this right to internet and add it to our constitution. Yeah.
Another right that I think is somewhat worrisome in this time, and it is not specifically enumerated in our Bill of Rights, is the right to privacy. In the case of Griswold versus Connecticut, the court found that the right to privacy is found in the First, Third, Fourth, Fifth, and Ninth Amendments. However, we see with a lot of recent abortion cases and even Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health, we see that the Roe versus Wade decision may be overturned and female privacy rights and reproductive rights are at risk. So I think that being able to enumerate the specific right to privacy is something that's very important and possibly troublesome in the current age.
To the other aspect of your question, I would consider freedom of conscience to be something that's integral to be included in the Bill of Rights. William Penn said, "No man can be happy, even with the greatest of civil rights, without freedom of conscience." And James Madison himself wanted this to be included in the Bill of Rights. So I consider it like integral and imperative to add this to our Bill of Rights to expand and support the rights we already have.
Let me give you it might be a little ridiculous scenario, but let's see with if you like or dislike it. I'm Madison. We're all in the first Congress, and I'm giving you the Bill of Rights, and it has the 9th and the 10th Amendment. That's it. Nothing else. How good of an idea or how bad of an idea do you think that is?
If I was in that case and Madison proposed those amendments, as an anti-federalist, I would be extremely concerned because my rights weren't specifically enumerated. George Mason said that we should wear our rights as armor and buckle it on as our breastplate. So I think that this is something that is that was of great concern at the time, and the anti-federalists wanted to make sure their rights were specifically enumerated because of the former tyranny of the British government. They were worried that their rights wouldn't be protected, and they wanted to make sure that those rights were not oppressed with their new constitution.
Well, with the ninth and
No, go ahead, Taylor.
the 9th and 10th Amendments allow us to have the flexibility that the Federalists wanted in the Constitution. This is why we also had clauses like the necessary and proper clause, because we cannot imply every right, and some of our rights needed to be included, but the Federalists didn't feel that way. And they felt if we enumerate everything, then people will be restricted to only having the rights listed. So as a Federalist, I would be extremely concerned. I would be extremely satisfied with only the 9th and 10th Amendments because, yeah.
And adding on to Taylor, we also see that in every state that they already had a Bill of Rights. So you could see that as a Federalist, I would be satisfied because each person would have their individual rights and they wouldn't have to worry about creating a whole extra Bill of Rights in the Constitution.
I would also note that the 9th Amendment protects rights while the 10th Amendment supports powers. John Sherman said that 9th Amendment protects unenumerated rights as unenumerated as the sands near the sea. So I would say that including the 9th Amendment protects the wide plethora of rights that we have listed in our Bill of Rights now without having to directly state them.
Thank you.
Would you, as an anti-federalist, have advocated amending the 10th Amendment to read rights not expressly granted in the Constitution, or sorry, powers not expressly granted in the Constitution?
Can you repeat your question?
Sorry, would you add the word expressly to the 10th Amendment? Powers not expressly granted?
As an anti-federalist, I would want the word expressly added to the 10th Amendment because this would then give more power to state governments because it would take away the federal government's implied powers. So they would want to make sure that states had all the rights that weren't directly written into the Constitution. However, we know that through the necessary and proper clause and the case of McCulloch versus Maryland, implied powers is something that we do have in our system today. And as an anti-federalist, not having to worry about those implied powers that the federal government has, it would satisfy me as an anti-federalist.
And that word expressly was a concern when it came to the necessary and proper clause for the Anti-Federalists as well. And it was being considered to be used within that clause itself because powers were being continually expanded, and they saw that they'd be expanded through, as Emily referenced, the implied powers. And the Anti-Federalists were correct. With the decision of McCulloch v. Maryland at the very beginning of the Constitution and in its real application in the United States, the Supreme Court immediately expanded its power and allowed the creation of a national bank, even though that wasn't explicitly written. So I think it comes to the same thing with the Bill of Rights, but for the Anti-Federalists, this keeps the powers clear with this word expressly, and that's why their concern also carried to the necessary and proper clause.
Rita, you got a question?
I'm just sort of half amazed that all the things that they're, you were supposed to be stumping them and they jumped right in and answered.
Yeah. Well, let me try this one. Let me try this one.
Right.
Does it make a difference where rights come from?
I think it
Like,
does
or
make
another way, how are the British and the American definitions of where understandings of where rights come from? Does that matter?
Well, the British, especially earlier on in English legislating government, they believed that their rights came from this idea of the divine right of kings, and that people derive their power from what their leaders decided was correct, and that their power came from the divine, and that they were the ones that were the righteous.
I think we can
Thank
all
you.
Good job. Oh, it's my turn first. I'm sorry. Now here I was just enjoying things. So thanks, guys. It was good seeing you again. Good hearing your presentation. I think a very thorough opening statement. I think that you did a nice job. You didn't. I mean, some teams have in the opening statement have sort of gone on beyond the founding pretty early in their statement, but you stuck to it. But you also gave us a little bit of the political theory, right? That the Constitution means protecting human dignity, and that's an important part of what the founding fathers thought that they were doing, and that's probably true of both Federalists and Anti-Federalists. You noted that tyranny of the majority is a problem, and I thought that was good. Mosaic of rights, yeah. I mean, there was just a lot. I was not writing down fast enough. A couple of things in the follow-ups. You talked about overturning Dred Scott. It's not clear to me that Dred Scott has ever been overturned. There was the 14th Amendment, of course, or sorry, 13th Amendment ended slavery. But Dred Scott is very interestingly one of the first substantive due process cases. And, anyway, that's a problem. You said, you talked about McCulloch at the beginning of the U.S. Constitution, and I did some quick math here, and it was actually 30 years after the Constitution was ratified. So I don't know if that's right away. In my lifespan, it feels like right away, but maybe not in yours. And you talked about Federalist 10, and it's I think there's a really curious question there whether the Federalist 10 mechanism that Madison described of faction fighting faction has ever worked in the way that Madison described it as working. Because Madison then he undid, I think, the Federalist system very soon after he got into government. By starting a political party. And that the political parties have been the place where factions fight each other out. So there's some interesting questions there, and but this is all by way of saying, you made me think. And that's a very good thing. And you guys are well prepared for your journey in citizenship. And I wish you the best of luck From here on out, you're going to be exercising these rights from now on, and you're well equipped to do it. So thank you very much, and have fun in DC the rest. How much longer are you staying?
Only one more day.
Just one more day. Okay, well, cram everything into that day that you possibly can.
If I might, I loved the proposed amendments you suggested. I thought they were so great. I not only love campaign finance reform, but I really love a positive vote amendment. I don't know how you'd work it out, but what a great idea. And that was part of my, what I typically would have asked you about things, but I also love your, the things that you concerned about rights. So I thought y'all did a grand job, and I just wish I could be with you to go touring this afternoon.
Yeah, it's nice to see you again. To spend a little bit more time. I was intrigued by how you handled Rita's question, and then you kind of circled back to you made the comment that maybe we should put conscience in there. And then I thought, well, we kind of already have that through court decisions. And then, but you rescued yourself when you said, Madison had the idea to begin with. So, I mean, I think that's fantastic that you're just not in the presentism mode, that you realize that clearly was a founding idea that's rooted in actually the Virginia assessment debates of 1780. So the fact that you circled back to that, I thought was quite nice. And frankly, I'm just I'm loving the idea that maybe our Bill of Rights could have been the 9th and the 10th, and at least a few people would have been okay with that. So I enjoyed your discussion of that particularly, and you went through Federalist ideas as to why a Federalist might like that. It wasn't just like, I think, it was like, and I'm rooting myself in these who we're talking about. So I thought that was quite effective as well. So all that to say, like Professor Barlow, you've given me some stuff to think about. So I appreciate that, and good luck. Good luck. And Taylor, if you have a chance on campus, look us up and we can kibitz some more. So
I would love that. Thank you.
Final congratulations to your
Thanks,
team.
everybody.
And thank you for all of your hard work. It's very apparent you guys have been studying hard and learning these ideas and concepts. So it's now time for you to log off.